We're back. This is Villaincast, the podcast with Chris Paynes, the villain, and this week is again on the other side line is Naqi Arshed. Hello, Naqi.
Hola, amigo. How are you?
Hello, man. So first off, I have to say shout out to our sponsors. We haven't got any.
How you made me think then?
Actually, no. Okay, that's not exactly incorrect. We do have Patreon, and there are people I know who have supported myself on this channel for the videos, etc. So I would like to shout out to them. So thank you to the Patreon channel for donating so I can get equipment to make videos like this. So thank you to them. So they are our sponsors.
Yeah.
For now, unless actually real people like businesses come forward and like this is crowdfunded for now. Yes, it's been 1 week since our last one. That podcast went out last week. It went out really well. We have the Discord channel. I had a few ideas on the last week's episode, and we talked about quite a lot. It then kind of blew up, and like loads of questions have come through this week. So I'm going to try and turn this into a weekly sit down with you, because it seems like we get through quite a lot of discussion on that channel.
I don't know what they want to hear. We just talk shit for flipping hours.
Oh, dude, tell me about it. So we've actually, for the people who actually are joining us on this now, this podcast can now be found not only on YouTube, but Spotify and Amazon. Hopefully more in the not too distant future. So first thing in our little mailbag of questions for this week is the question on grip fighting. So I did a video on the pocket and an introduction to that idea that there's a distance where the fight matters. So it's like kind of in between part that's just kind of assumed happens, where you're either outside of the pocket and then all of a sudden something magic happens, and then you've got your grips that you wanted and you can do the techniques, completely ignoring the fact that getting those grips should be a war.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the introduction to the pocket. I will put little tags on the YouTube of this and put links through to the pocket introduction video. So to start off with then, there was a specific question of winning grips from the top of half guard. Now, we have fought numerous times. It's normally my half guard that you're trying to deal with. Yeah. What's your take on that? What do you normally look for in trying to beat top half? Then I'll come in with my my own suggestions afterwards.
So when I'm playing top half, what I'm looking for is, number one, to get you flat. So I want your shoulders flat. Where I don't want your shoulders is at that magic shoulder point in that 45-degree angle, because that's dangerous. Or all the way over where you can play like running man. So you're hiding your bottom arm, which is a variation we play sometimes as well.
So a quick explanation there. You mentioned the magic shoulder. What do you mean by?
So magic
obviously,
shoulder.
I know what you mean, but what do you mean by magic shoulder?
Obviously, before Baby Bridge and everything, we didn't really have Baby Bridge, or we weren't aware of it. We used to play the magic shoulder thing where we would lift, basically not be flat. The whole idea is to not be flat and to have one shoulder off the ground all the time. And again, it's similar to the hand fight, that it should be a battle. And it should be a battle if somebody's trying to pin you on the floor, that you just give them both your shoulders. So the magic shoulder came about where if you lift whichever shoulder you're lifting, so if I'm lifting my left shoulder, I want to support it with my left leg or left hip, more importantly. And then that way, it's very hard for them to flatten you. And if they do really try and flatten you, then you can use their momentum to start looking for underhooks, bumping them side to side. You know, you're making a move on top. They're not just there with that underhook, safely just waiting, playing their game, trying to, submit you and all that stuff. So pinning you down should be a game in itself.
I think one of the core principles behind what you're trying to get to, because obviously I've mostly talked about this, and I think before we had a great big push on baby bridge, and maybe Hawking 2.0. We had like a similar idea with, like I said, magic shoulder, was the idea of, like I say, not being flat. I try and, whenever I explain this these days, it's the idea of the X and the Y axis, as in you make sure you're not on the X flat or Y completely on your side. And the reason why I don't particularly like either of those positions for your body is that it's kind of the position where your legs don't really work to the extent that they should. The second you go into a diagonal, where I've used other words to describe this before. I think anyone who's ever watched any of my stuff before knows the term nipples.
The third nipple.
I won't explain that here. But yeah, you want to have like a 45-degree angle to your shoulders, because that kind of activates your legs. That kind of is, if anyone's seen Hawking 2.0 or Baby Bridge, very similar. That's your legs are thoroughly activated in those positions. I think that's what we're trying to get to when it comes to the, you don't want me to be in that position on the bottom of half guard, is that if I'm in one of those 45-degree angles, then my legs are kind of
playing
active. I can create good pressure to the floor or into you. In the other angles, it's quite difficult.
I mean, and then you can attack both sides. You can come for single legs on one side, and then you can start playing your deep half, or you're attacking the far leg game, or upper body grips and stuff. So if you're flat, then you've got to first get to the side and then start playing your game. And if I can stop you getting that angle, then I can deal with you easily. Like, then I can look for my underhooks and stuff.
I think there's a general kind of principle for stepping away from the. I'll circle back around to the top half specificity of this. But general ideas on actually winning a grip battle, depending on if you're top or bottom, is actually using kind of these external attributes to your advantage. And you could probably attest to how familiar this sounds. When I go hunting from bottom guard for grips, especially not half guard or anything like that, I don't want you in balance when I go hunting my grips, because it's 2 versus 2. It's my hands versus your hands.
Exactly.
Balance isn't going to be one of my issues, because I'm on my back. I can't fall anymore. I'm already on the ground. You can fall. So I'm going to use the fact that I have 4 limbs at my disposal. I have 4 weapons. That's why we have guard, is that I have 2 arms and 2 legs in this fight. I'm going to use that to my advantage. I'm going to unbalance you. It doesn't have to be a sweep or anything like that. But I'm going to make you put your hand on the ground. Because as you put your hand on the ground, that means you have 1 less limb in this. Because theoretically, you have as many weapons as I have. You have 2 arms and 2 legs, except 2 of your weapons are being used for locomotion and keeping you upright, your legs. So they're taking out the fight for the most part. So you have 2 hands. So if I can lock up one of those hands by knocking it onto the floor, then it's 2 versus 1, or even 4 versus 1, and I'll win that exchange. So on the flip side of that, when you're on top, you have gravity on your side. And so automatically, like, if you can pinch one of those grips in towards the hips, or if I'll lock it towards the floor, I know you do that to me. You can use gravity and weight,
mobility. Gravity and mobility.
Overcome that bottom person's
4 weapons
strength. Exactly. It's going to be hard for me if I'm pushing from the bottom to use my grip if your weight is behind your grips on top. Like, how many times have we locked each other's like wrists in towards our gut? Helping there. It's not from like close guard, for example. So as a general, I mean, there are further ideas. Another one is control of bone over other things. So actually, like, hunting for the radial bone. Anyone who is listening to this via audio only channels, you won't be able to see this, but just at the kind of just above the elbow here, you'll feel like a rounding of like the radial ulna. You can kind of grab onto that of like your finger and thumb and actually use that as a connection. Also the idea of, I remember, I think it was Dan Strauss actually, in one of his seminars where he came down to us talking about you can have amplify leverage when you go down a limb. So if you imagine the say if the arm was just like one solid bit of wood from your shoulder all the way down to the tip of your finger, it'd almost be like the leverage would like make sense. Like, you know, there'd be a mathematical, you know, logarithmic kind of explanation for the further you went down the arm, mathematically, you know, the leverage would increase.
Yeah.
Arms aren't like that; they have joints, and as soon as you kind of like pass a joint, the leverage kind of increases. The amount of power you can exert over someone's arm increases. Like going from one side of the wrist to the other, from the forearm to the hand, is exponentially stronger. So controlling the fingers, I mean, and that's kind of frowned upon. Like, don't grab the fingers. Of course you can. It's even in the rules. Yeah, 3 or more is fine. So doing that as well, like amplifying the leverage issue of, like, you know, grab the furthest from the extremity, fingers or toes if you're playing on top of half guard as well, top of guard, should I say. So general ideas on grip fighting: do more of it, use the natural attributes to your advantage. If you're on the bottom, you have balance to destroy, use it. If you're on top, use gravity and mass to your advantage. And when it comes back to the top half problem, I think it's almost like a change in perspective. As long as you can kind of stick to the guard principles of limiting how much someone is behind
your knees.
Behind your knees, like they've got a single leg on you with their legs. That's what half guard is. But also you can kind of change your perspective. And when we get back in the gym, I want to do a video on this about the bottom leg, and that's kind of the integral part of half guard. If you can pass that bottom knee, you kind of destroy a lot of things, as long as you don't get behind your knee as well and go for like deep half. But also, like, you know, there's head locations, there's forward pressure and stuff like that. But I think if you can get past that bottom knee, you can change the perspective on bottom half from it being a guard to a side control with their leg caught. I think if you can do that, actually, I think it changes the perspective of the person on top. But this then goes into a further kind of idea of like guard.
It's massive. General. This is.
I think we're going to kill this topic. So it's definitely something I'm going to put forward on the Discord channel, but goes into the idea of jab cross. Like, don't just pass. If you just pass, you're just throwing jabs. Like, you have to throw a submission as well from top. Like, give them something to threaten about.
And change directions, because you know, that's your hook. Then you know what I mean. Then you 1, 2, 3.
Exactly.
Or if you're going to try and go through them like stats and stuff, that's your uppercut. So you're mixing it all up. You know,
if you're trying to just pass, it's dumb, because it's like, oh, I just have to deal with them trying to get past my guard. They're not thinking my ankles are in danger. It's the same with on the bottom. Like, if you're just going for a sweep or just a submission,
nah, you got to mix it up.
Oh god, yeah. You like, it's the only way I'll ever get hold of you is I have to like really unbalance the hell out of you, and as you're falling over, I'll normally latch onto your leg and go for it. Anything else, it's not worth it. I hope that answers that question. Like, okay, so general ideas on grip fighting and winning grips from top half.
And hand pins. Hand pins, like, that's something I think is underused in grappling in general, hitting the hands to the body or to the floor.
Oh, completely.
You know what I mean? Like, how many times do I have to do that to you, and then I have the opportunity then getting you back central? Because if I don't pin your hands, there's no way I can get you back flat or take your legs or hips face the ceiling again. You know what I mean?
Well, you've taken them completely out of the fight. As in, it's the same like if you're on in turtle, you can use it on both sides of turtle, like just pinning someone's hand into the floor.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as you get a hold of that fight, and they can't really move, they're kind of stuck to the ground. I think there needs to be a further kind of delve into that, but I really look forward to actually doing that in the gym in a new video if we get some good news tomorrow. That kind of then leads nicely onto the next question I want to go through, was that of turning defense into attack. So obviously, a lot of the people who have come through on this channel are aware of Preet, the guy who kind of mentored us into this system. And one of the confusing parts of it, I mean, I actually do have Preet tomorrow in the podcast, and I want to talk to him about this, especially the Sahabi stuff.
Oh yes.
But before I get into that with him, and I did really do a deep dive into that hopefully tomorrow.
Yeah.
How do you turn, like, because we've actually had to work a lot through this, turn when you're defending into an attack? What would you say would like be the critical points of that?
Turning defending to attack. I mean, you've got to wrestle, man. You've got to be able to wrestle. You've got to be able to play jiu-jitsu. It's like you just said, it's a jab cross. You've got to be able to throw things at them, sweeps, submissions, because you got to get them unbalanced. And this is where we're now working on the attack at our gym before COVID, where, we were looking at all that stuff and we were like, okay, we can't get them if they're in a position. We need to get them in transition. So even if you're on the bottom, you've got to get them moving, because if they just stay there, they're going to start hunting for you. So it's all about movement. You've got to initiate movement, in my opinion.
There's actually quite an interesting thing that again, I think you're completely right with you don't attack someone who's static. No. It's easy to attack someone who's in transition. And the amount of times I've actually heard various black belts talk about this idea. It was one of the super high level guys, I mean, Chanji or someone like that, said it. I remember reading it like a few years ago, said it or something like that video, where if someone's trying to go from like a side control to mount, for example, whilst they're in side control, all their weight is spread across 4 limbs. But as soon as they start going for mount, they have to shift their weight out of one of the limbs to move it. That's just human physiology. You have to take your weight off something in order to move it. It's how we walk. And so the best time to then try and take them and move that leg is when their weight's not on it. Yeah. Because it's no longer heavy.
It's like wrestling. When we teach single legs, we if you're going for the front leg, you got to nudge them to put their weight on their back leg, so the front leg becomes light and it's an easy lift.
Yeah, of course. You can't just lift someone who's got their weight on their front leg.
Exactly, same principle.
And actually, it's something I started to talk about with people was this idea of there is, I feel dirty for saying this, some benefit to the idea of Wing Chun. And actually, it was quite funny. I was watching a video the other day. I think it was like useless martial arts or something. I'm not saying that Wing Chun is useless, but I think it was not useful in MMA or something.
Oh yes, MMA on point. I watched it as well.
Yeah. And so there is benefit to Wing Chun. It sounds something like, I might have been dreaming this, about this relationship that you could actually see its kind of benefit in something like in BJJ, in that it's that kind of feeling your opponent move by being relaxed.
Yeah.
The more stressed you are, you're not going to pick up on their slight movements. But if you if you have a frame on someone's hip in the bottom of side control, for example, if you're stretching and pushing, you're not going to feel their sudden weight shift when they do take the weight off their leg to move.
Yes.
And that's the moment you do move.
Yeah.
So I think there's numerous little laws and concepts that you can kind of bring into this, how do you turn defense into attack? Move in the transitions. Wrestle, yeah, absolutely. Get back onto all fours. I think look at the logic of jiu-jitsu is that throughout all of human history and time and space and whatever, whenever grappling has existed, it always has come back to the same kind of core tenet of once a human being is on their back, they're in a bad place. That's why we have pins.
Yeah.
That's, when I was in Iceland, with the Globetrotter camps, we did some Glima. It's the exact same idea. This is how Vikings kind of settled their differences, is that you put the man on his back without going off your own feet, because as soon as a man's on his back, he's dead. Judo, same idea with the Ippon, catch wrestling and Greco-Romans, all put someone on their back. Why?
Yeah.
Because someone who can get onto their front can get up. Simple as that.
Simple as that, exactly.
And if someone can get up, they can carry on fighting. So use that to our advantage then. So from a wrestling perspective, if you can get to all fours, that's why this turtle system works really well. there's a chance I can wrestle again. I can get up. I can move in the transitions. But then looking at the concept of jiu-jitsu, why does jiu-jitsu work? You know, the idea of, okay, I am on my back, is you're increasing your weapons from 2 to 4. That's the difference between jiu-jitsu and wrestling, is that instead of just being on my back and having to use strength to try and get back up onto all fours, I can use, I can maneuver myself with shrimps or whatever to then bring my legs into the fight, increase my weapon load
frames.
by 2. Yeah. And then attack with these extra weapons and try and get back upright again. Those people who say that jiu-jitsu doesn't make sense in a street fight, of course it does. You don't be on your back.
It all goes down to that. Anyway. It all goes down to that. You know, get on top, stay on top, win on top. You know what I mean? That's what it all comes down to, isn't it?
Chris Hoyter had it right. Like,
Chris Hoyter,
be the guy on top. So circling back around to turning defense into attack. Look at those core ideas of what jiu-jitsu, what wrestling actually means. It means, can you get onto your front? Can you get upright again? Learn some wrestling, like not high impact kind of, you know, lifting someone up into the air, Matt Hughes style and dunking them.
Somersaults and none of that.
Yeah, just like how to do a low single, how to do a low double, like just collecting someone's knees together like a knee tap and just putting them over. That's enough.
Yeah,
that's really all you need. That actually, go carry on.
Yeah, clinches, collar ties. That's all your hand fighting, isn't it? Really, you know, that's where we get our hand fighting from. Wrestling, it's all clinches, collar ties, you know, arm drags, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Just pocket work, closing distance. I mean, I delve into this a lot deeper. I think I actually will. I want to go through I'm going to be making a video soon on the bicycle wheel problem and stuff like that. And so hopefully, if you have listened to this podcast, if you are tuning into this, definitely check out that video because it will explain a lot of like the circular issues in jiu-jitsu and how you can actually use those to your advantage. And that is a key part, I think, of turning defense into attack or vice versa. I thought I kind of shaped this with all the questions that we've actually been asked. I've been trying to find a way of shaping this together so it actually makes some sort of sense. The next question was, do counters exist, or do you have to be, or just about dominance in jiu-jitsu?
Nah,
your
man.
Thoughts, Naqi?
There's a counter to everything. Like before, we always just think, no, this is it, this works, and that's it. But like the more you do this, you know, this new system, the more it's like, okay, now we've got an answer. It's not. There's got to be another answer. There's got to be another answer. There's an answer to everything, and it all comes down to timing, in my opinion.
I think it's almost like jiu-jitsu, as it's normally taught, traditionally taught, is about counters. It's about counterpunching. It's this idea of, you know, they do X, you do Y, in that is a counter, that is a counter punch or whatever. They've done something, and in that exact moment in the chaos where all the planets have aligned, you do something that's a counter move, even if you're in a non-dominant position, even if you're in a non-dominant situation, you could pull off this counter move.
Yeah,
I think that's the problem, is that is normal jiu-jitsu, and this is where this system's kind of like filled in the gaps that should have existed beforehand. In that all we had were counters, all we had were counter punches. We didn't have a system of how do you just cover your chin? How do you just defend on a pure basis? How do you just attack on a pure basis? What is a good grip? What is a dominant position? And for anyone who's actually kind of like who's looking into Preet's general ideology on jiu-jitsu, I think that's where it kind of fills the gaps. I mean, you can have all these kind of magical things in jiu-jitsu, and that should come, especially at your level, like a brown belt and black belts and stuff, etc. But I don't think you should be doing it until like purple, brown, black belt. I think up until that point, it should just be about the core movements. It should just be about the kind of basic boxing, like how do you cover your chin, how do you block, and then fire back. You can learn to counterpunch way down the line, But until then,
defense, man. We've seen at our gym, like new white belts coming in, you can't submit them 3-4 months in. You're like, what? You know what I mean? You shouldn't be. I wouldn't have to need to go to level 2 to submit, a 3-month white belt. I have to go to level 2 and 3. You know what I mean? Because they're not giving you the opportunity. Smaller. Yeah, way smaller. Like what works? We always say what works now.
It makes the learning process a lot smaller, because all of a sudden you don't need to learn a million
hundreds of submissions,
passes, or a million different sweeps, or a million different escapes from situations. There's always one core one that always works. Once you have the core one down, then you can look at counters and stuff like that, in certain situations. But until then, so that kind of that question of, do counters exist? That is all jiu-jitsu has been, is counters to certain situations. That's all everyone's ever done, a setup to an outcome. I think the bigger question is, why hasn't there been any jiu-jitsu which isn't about counters? And that's what we're kind of deep diving into with what we're doing, what Preet's doing, and various other people now on this, especially defensive BJJ, his site. I want to talk to him about that tomorrow, but how that's actually growing exponentially, and how that's going to change. Now there's more people on it, like crowdfunded gray matter all over it. Going from that, then, and this is kind of one of the probably one of the bigger topics that we're probably going to go through. How do you incorporate this style of training? So, okay, and then I've already written in my notes. I've called this the paradox, and I know I've said this to Preet in the past, and I know I've said it in our gym. The paradox problem of, how do you incorporate this? Say you're a blue belt and you've come across our stuff, and you're from a traditional-esque BJJ gym that trains in the traditional kind of way. How do you incorporate this training when you are in that kind of gym and you don't have a certain how that gym is, the direction of that gym and how it's taught?
You need to find someone who's going to listen to you and who's going to help you. You need to, I don't know. I haven't had that. Well, obviously, we're different. We haven't had that experience, because it was like, when we started it, I was a blue belt. He just basically came back and he said, fuck this. We need to get him down here and we're going to do whatever he says. We're like, all right, then. Okay, no problem. We trust you, Chris. No problem. And
okay, that actually circles around to you can actually look at that from a different way then, as in, how do you, as a student, change what you do compared to what the coach? I think this is an even bigger topic than how do you then, as a student, step away from what your coach is teaching to do something else that you've seen online? Can you? Is it
it goes rude? It goes back to that tribal problem we have in jiu-jitsu, don't we?
Yeah. Because obviously I don't care in our gym.
We don't care. You know what I mean? We'll go anywhere. If anybody, will train with anyone.
Well, no, not even that. As in, say I have my own thoughts on how we should train. I'm the black belt of the gym, and then you guys are kind of then left to your own devices to then actually fill in all the rest of the blanks. So I don't. No, obviously, you all watch different videos, you all go to different gyms, you bring back ideas and you train it. I think we're quite lucky in that kind of an open way of doing it. But this is why I call it the paradox. The paradox of this kind of training is that, obviously, you guys have known I've gone out and done seminars, I do videos, and it's all this, and I know Preet does the videos and, all this kind of stuff on what's basically the family jewels of his gym. Like, what makes his gym so tough is this stuff. Like, what his stuff he's figured out. And so you'd think, from a student's perspective, looking at the coach, thinking, like, coach, you're giving away the family secrets.
Nah, man. We've had this conversation before, haven't we?
This is the paradox.
We've had this conversation.
Yes, because it's like, okay, we've got all the stuff. Pre obviously trusted us with it, and we kind of changed our gym. But then I'm off giving it away again.
Yeah.
So the paradox is, I don't know if there's a true use of the word, but I just called it that because it's an easy way of remembering the idea in my head, is that it doesn't matter that I'm giving it away or anyone's paying attention. Because unless there's a fundamental change in the gym, it means nothing anyway.
100%. This stuff only works if you practice it. If you're not rolling with people who don't do this on a daily basis, you ain't gonna get the timing. You ain't gonna. It's different.
You could be covering the gaps, like doing all the right things, but unless you actually train with someone who actually knows to hunt the gaps, you never build upon the timing.
Exactly.
So, and that's the great thing is this can be trained and taught or whatever. But unless everyone actually does it, it means nothing anyway. You actually don't get any growth out of it. There needs to be like a fundamental change in the gym. So then, okay, so if that's the general problem with it, how would you then go about actually, as a blue belt or purple belt or even a white belt, training this in a gym that is on a traditional way? Or how would you, how can you shape your training to be more efficient? What would you say, like to maximize your time? So if you cannot be a mat rat, you can only do like 2 or 3 sessions a week.
I'd stick to the defense. Just let them be on top. Learn whatever you're watching from pre or whatever, and stay on bottom. Because once you figured out the bottom, when you get better a few months down the line, you can start attacking, and you'll understand it yourself. But again, it's that if you're not rolling with people who are hunting them gaps, you won't progress as faster. But I think you'll still progress because the high belts do it. You know, the browns and the black belts, they do hunt the gaps. You know, probably in a different way than what we do because we're looking for different things. But obviously, there's a reason they're at the top or they are winning big matches because they understand jiu-jitsu, but in a different way. But because this new system's coming through, I think the main thing is the progression that white belts are going to have back to getting to black belt, because they'll develop the timing, the pressure, and everything playing the system. And that's what a lot of people, going back to what Firas Zahabi was saying, thinking that it's just a defensive system. Yes, it's a defensive system, but there's a lot of attacks which is nullifying, and your attacks that are going to stay are going to be very small, but it's going to be jab crosses. It's going to be timing. You know, this jab cross idea, it's not taught in jiu-jitsu for some reason, because it's a sport at the end of the day.
Oh, actually, you say that is I went to one of the Danaher, Gordon Ryan, Garrett Honan seminars. It's about 3 or 4 years ago now. It was over at Bradley's gym. It's actually something that Gordon Ryan said. He said that my memory is hazy. I've been hit in the head a lot since then. But he said, like, you know, when he's trying to pass on top, he's always threatening leg locks because the defense of one is the cause of the other. Like if I hunt your legs, you might normally give me a pass. If you're trying to defend a pass, you're normally not thinking about your legs. So that's actually, you say that, you know, it's a sport. The upper echelons of this sport do this.
Yes.
But I think again, this circles back around to maybe one of the problems in traditional gyms is it's taught ABC.
Yes.
Instead of this idea that try and look at the end outcome and look at it, there's 2 possible outcomes and playing both at the same time. So trying to answer this question of how to incorporate this training or how to maximize what you do in the gym if you haven't got the time, I'd say that don't get too bogged down with maximizing the amount of techniques you have. I'd say take the core fundamental concepts, write them down. They are all over these videos. Maybe one day I'll just do like a rundown of all the concepts. I'll ask the Discord channel if that's any use. So if you listen to this and you think a rundown of the core concepts is useful, like, I don't know, send us money and that would give us a hint. Oh, I get it now. The money's arrived.
The energy goes, you know, faster and quicker.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, it goes into my brain faster this way. Yeah, so have an idea of the core concepts in your head and then read the jiu-jitsu from it, as in read your roles and or try and incorporate the concept like one at a time. it's kind of, whenever I've taught like something fundamentally changing, like do more grip fighting in the pocket or sweep theory or something like that, what will usually happen is actually the same. Again, one of the funny things about jiu-jitsu is normally when you teach a technique and everyone in the class does it, no one will get that technique for about a month.
Yeah.
Because everyone's got that technique on their mind.
Yeah.
I'd say play one of the concepts and hit it repeatedly until that's all you're doing in the fight. And then eventually it'll kind of relax off. It's kind of like you've pendulumed one way and then it kind of swings back into a more normal part of jiu-jitsu, but that's now slotted in, if you know what I mean. And keep doing that. I mean, it's actually one thing that, you know, from my white belt days when I first met Christian, I don't know if it was in his book or it was a seminar I went to of his when I was a white belt, Christian Graugot, is this idea of writing on your fridge or wherever, you know, something you're going to do for the next 6 months, for the next year. Because if you're serious about jiu-jitsu, you're going to be here forever. You're going to be here for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So why just do something for a month or whatever? You don't have to have your coach's approval to do this. You know, you can kind of structure your own rolling from it. But take something and make it yours for the next year.
Yeah.
And I started to do this, like I say, about 9 years ago, whenever it was, 8 years ago. In that, what I do is I said, like almost write it down. So this is my thing now for the next year. And I started doing that. I mean, initially it was like a stiff arm escape from side control. It doesn't have to be a sweep or submission. It can be anything, a certain escape, a certain position. But I would do the stiff arm escape every single roll, no matter what that person did to me. Like I had to fail it a million times. I got armbarred. I got it stuffed into my neck, and I got all horrible things done to me. But eventually, I think when you started, I might have been a killer with this technique. If I fired off that technique, you were done, because I'd done it a million times in a million different roles with a million different people. Like, I knew how it worked. And then I think roughly when you started, I became obsessed with pressure from top side control.
Yeah.
I like how you smile and laugh when you hear that. But I spent then probably 3 to 4 years only concentrating on that. Obviously, you know, you'd have your satellite things you're working on in jiu-jitsu, but every time I'd always make sure I'd get to the top side and I'd try and find a way of making someone go, because I obliterate their ribs in a certain way. So eventually I knew everything they had to about pressure, that I could just knew exactly where to put the weight on my hip or my shoulder or anything to make my side control miserable. And I think you remember those days.
Yeah.
So like I said, it was a pendulum. It was swinging hard that way, and now it's kind of calmed down. I've got like a normal jiu-jitsu again. But yeah, so how do you maximize your training then? Is see it in the longer term. See it as, I'm going to be here for a while. Don't dilly-dally between, that's so English, it's unreal. Don't flip between different things all the time and get bored, because then you're barely scraping the surface of something before you've moved on to the next thing. Take a few core concepts like this whole defensive positioning, like covering and stuff like that, and just focus that in your rolling. Make that the core thing you're focusing on at all rolls, that you have to do it at least once. Like, you're going to mess up your guard and you go to this defensive posture. And that's pretty much what we did when we first started picking it up. I mean, we've been doing this now for coming up to 4 years, I think it is.
Yeah, coming up to 4.
It's the end of 2017.
Yeah, coming up to 4.
Exactly. It's nuts, isn't it?
In November, November will be 4 years.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, we're at 3 in a bit. But every roll was kind of like you'd fail, you go straight into this kind of defensive posture, until now it's just settled in all of us. We've killed it. Like, we know exactly everything about it. So anyone like white belt, blue belt, or anything like that, it doesn't have to be defensive postures, but I'd highly recommend it. Yeah. Take the concepts, take sweep theory, take choke theory, take something you really love, take the defensive postures, and you know, do the drills that your coach says. Don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
They got to their level for a reason. There's something you really want to work on. Do it once every roll. Fail it a million times. Fail it and be critical of why you failed it. Look at it from that third person's perspective and go, right, that time I didn't have my elbow there, or my leg wasn't there, or I was a bit late on this, or, you know, and branch out on it as well. Like think, okay, well, this time I tried to go out this way, it didn't work. Right, next time I'm going to do this, and understand everything there is to do about this one little bit of jiu-jitsu, and eventually you'll be possible to beat with it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, linking on to that is sorry, what we were about again? I had something and then you stopped and I was like, damn, I forgot it now.
I know I went on a bit of a rant then. It was this idea of taking something in your jiu-jitsu and seeing the longer picture for it.
Yes. So yeah, I just got it back again. Try and remember your roles. I think that's one of the best things you can do, because if you can have a 5-minute role, and if you can remember most of it or the main things that happen, and you can talk to yourself after, or like I said, if you can find a partner who you can talk to, feedback is one of the main things, and it's one of the major things that I think jiu-jitsu lacks, especially in training and other gyms that I've seen, is people don't talk to each other. Like they don't talk, okay, this failed, why did it fail? Okay, let me try this again. Okay, what happens if I do this? You rarely see it. It's like just roll and then that's it, you move on to the next person. I mean, if you come to our gym, like it's a roll, and then you'll see people talking for about 2 minutes, and then the next person, some will carry on, like the competitors. If it's like competition roles, they'll just carry on. But you'll see people who are working on a skill, and they'll be saying at the end of a roll and be like, "Oh, I did this." Okay, if you can try and remember your roles, I think that will really help your development.
I think that was actually something that Tarza said about when he was at our gym and we were talking to him about what trains like at the Blue Basement. He said that the role is not massively into just round after round after round killer rolls. It's like, you might have one roll, then like 10 minutes off or something like that. I can't remember. It's been years. I guess like 4 years since we saw Tarza. Because they talk about the roles and try to figure out what they were doing. I think, again, that's maybe something we need to focus a bit more on. Because it is super addictive. Like sometimes you have to do these, 5 minutes on, 30 seconds off, let's go, Spartan.
Yeah.
But I think it's also just as critical to have like 5 minutes on, 10 minutes off. And I know just before we kind of left the gym due to Rona, one thing I started to incorporate quite a lot of on, say if we'd gone through a concept on that night or a certain technique or whatever, is I'd say to people like roll, but you should be able to hit a pause button. Like there should, it's not a true roll. It's not to the death Spartan kind of let's go for this until one of us emerges victorious. Look at it from as a learning tool. There should be a pause and rewind button. You should be able to, at any point in that like specific kind of roll. No, it's not like a positional sparring or anything like that. And again, things can easily get out of hand.
Yeah.
You should be able to just go, stop there, pause. Right, can you just rewind 3 seconds to where we were before? Can we pause again? I want to see what my options are from here.
Yeah.
Again, like numerous black belts have spoken about this idea before. I know Christian used to have his chest drill, and that's one thing I think we used to do years ago, is that it was kind of like 1-for-1 techniques.
Yeah.
As in, you do a technique, and then I do a technique, and you can't counter anything I'm about to do. Like if I went for a grip on your leg, you couldn't like move your leg out of the way. I got to do what I wanted to do. So it was like, and then like, you press the timer and then it'll go to the person and they'd then do however long they wanted to do their technique.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that extreme. But, and again, like Dan has kind of, this thing about what Taz said, if our memory serves correctly, that, having longer off between rounds to actually examine what the round was.
Yeah.
Or what we do of hitting the pause button. I think rolling is important for timing and then important for cardio, and just because it's an addictive sport, that's why we're in this. But I think also there needs to be another type of rolling where it is an educational tool. You're doing it for a specific reason, for a specific outcome in your own head. Like, I'm working on this concept today in my rolls, win or lose.
It's another method of active drilling, ain't it? Another branch
exactly.
of active drilling.
So I don't know if it's like randori would be like a prime example, like in the judo world. Like you have sparring, competition sparring, whatever, but then you have randori, which is where you're doing the techniques of that night in a live environment. Which is, I think, pretty much what we went into with the pause aspect.
Yeah.
rolling from that situation, but hitting pause at the right time to go, right, how do I get this now? Or how do I mess this up? Final part then, I'm sure we'll just waffle on for a bit, is question was asked about who I think and this is actually quite funny, who I think my top 3 online instructors are in Jiu-Jitsu. I don't watch any instructionals. What makes it even funnier is I don't watch any instructionals, but I make a channel all about doing instructionals. Online instructionals, yeah, I don't use them. I don't know if that's a time problem or anything like that. Also, what even funnier, I never drill. I haven't drilled a technique in a gym scenario. I don't know, maybe I've done a little bit at the camps and stuff, but like going to a gym and drilling. How old am I? 8 or 9 years. Which then goes, I think there's a bigger topic on that, and how do you learn about drilling in 9 years? So I think, okay, I can't answer that question. Who would you consider your top 3 online instructors then?
Again, I don't watch instructionals.
If we had Alex on here, I think Alex could go on forever about who his are.
Yeah, I think off the top of my head, because he does a lot of gi, doesn't he? He loves gi. He likes a few guys, to be fair. But I mean, going back to me, online, I don't watch any instructionals, but I watch a lot of like high level matches, MMA and Jiu-Jitsu, just to try to figure out what they're doing. Not, just watching what they're doing and how it fits into what we're doing. And there's a lot of things which I see could be cancelled out easily with what we're doing, and there's things which could be made worse, with the offense that we were playing with before COVID. But that's the way I learned, to be fair. But I do follow a couple of guys. I mean, Lachlan Giles, he come to our gym, didn't he? And we had good roles. And obviously he likes preach stuff, and he understands, he takes some of the stuff out of it as well and uses it. And I like his way of teaching, and I've seen a couple of his things. When he did the whole K-guard stuff, I watched a couple of things on that, and I was like, this is quite cool. Who else? Obviously Tarza, because he come to our gym, got to know him a bit, and he taught us quite a bit with the leg lock stuff and the butterfly stuff. And I'd say one of the first guys we had at our gym, Dan Strauss, when I started. I watched, he taught us butterfly originally, didn't he? Me anyway. And then, they're the 3 guys who I would really watch online. If I was to say instructional wise, they're not instructional, maybe a couple minute clips that I watch. I'm looking at what they're doing.
Yeah, I think
I've never bought an instructional. Never bought one.
No, I don't think I have. I think I bought the Kit Dale Nick Gregoriadis one like years ago, like 7 years ago, which was a conceptual one anyway. But I don't. I feel it's like I think this is one of the biggest problems in is I remember years and years ago. So this kind of gives away my age in this sport. Is I probably got a lot of my initial stuff by watching Submissions 101. I think it was really before like YouTube was like mostly used for jiu-jitsu. A lot of it was like hosted on individual websites kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which is where I was finding a lot of the techniques I literally started using back in 2009. But I remember watching like Imanari and then the Imanari roll because it was cool. Yeah. And then actually learning it from Imanari himself back in September last year.
Yeah.
The online, like the details that he had in person were infinitely better. But my understanding of jiu-jitsu had changed so much that I could now see why his worked. And so I think the reason I don't watch an online instructors, and maybe I just watch matches more or just 1 minute clips and stuff like that, is I'm more interested in the conceptual foundations of jiu-jitsu, and I'd rather almost like see the theory play out. Like I don't like these like really flashy kind of like madness, upside down, inverted, rolly, back take, leg lock, madness. That would happen in a million years. Exactly, but it's kind of like I'm almost like a you know, absolute purist with how I want my jiu-jitsu to be. I want it to be like in most foundational form. So if I then, like, you know, watch all that kind of madness, spin around insanity, and if it just lands in an armbar, I'm like, cool, why is that armbar working? You know, is it following the principles of one above, one below? And it's just stuff like that, you know, like if I see someone get swept or a sweep or something like that in a random video, I'm like, right, does the sweep follow this rule? Is it, you know, they following sweep theory?
Yeah.
Yes or no? And then it's kind of like, is it reinforcing the concept for me? Is it like, is my concept right? Is this technique right? Or is this madness and, like, I don't know, Aikido technique where someone's just falling over?
Oh, when I watch Matthew sometimes, man, like if somebody else was watching me, I'll be like, "Where's your chicken, man? Where's your chicken? What are you doing?" When somebody's playing guard, I'm like, "What are you doing? There's no chicken, bro."
Well, that's the kind of, like, exactly, like, if I watch like a match and then I see one of our principles in action, I'm like, right, well, that's why this isn't working, or this is working for him.
Yeah.
And so it kind of then reinforces in me, or if something changed or something happens, and it's the concept breaking or something, like, I don't know, someone I don't know, like, say, playing grilled chicken, like, you know, covering the gaps, and all of a sudden they've gone for something, their leg opens up and, like, the pass happens, like, right, okay, cool, that's why. Same with, like, if someone can't escape like a leg lock or something like that, it's like, is it following the leg lock principles? And actually, with my little notes that I've scribbled down to my side, there is something on, someone asked about leg lock principles, basic leg lock principles. I keep coming back into this. From a traditional gym then, this person's asked about leg lock principles and, like, what kind of leg lock principles we'd follow. And so then kind of goes into this, like, conceptual thing that we just talked about, is that I don't need to watch instructionals because I'm the purist. I want to make sure that if I do watch something, it's kind of fitting the narrative, and, like, I'm not interested in just straightforward techniques, and that seems to be what most instructionals are. What would you say then is, how would you then explain, because this person said, like, you know, you can watch all the Dan Her videos in the world. How would you explain basic leg lock principles to a traditionalist white belt gym person?
Basic leg lock principles. Knee line, most basic one you can give them. Control the knee line.
What do you mean? So, okay, this is me throwing you to the lions den right now. This is an online podcast.
Yeah.
Probably to most people, it's going to be audio only.
Yeah.
And they don't really play leg locks.
Okay, so
how do you explain the hunting of leg locks? Consider they may have already heard the inside-outside stuff that you did recently.
Yes.
How do you explain the control on hunting of leg locks to someone who's only listening to us?
So, with any limb submission, obviously we know the joint that we want to attack. We need to control the one above and below. Yeah. So the main things you really break with your legs or someone's legs is their knees and ankles. That's both inside and outside, and at the foot as well. And if you know, not like they're not moves to break your main bones, your tibia and the fibula, but sometimes, you know, we've seen it happen with the leg locks where the actual bone has broken. But obviously, when we're hunting, we're only looking for the knee and the ankles and foot, etc. Yeah. So if I want to break the knee, actually, we've actually found recently that with the ankle locks, we don't really always need the top of the knee, above the knee, do we?
No, that was the thing that we got from Amsterdam is, it's a nicety to get the whole leg, but you don't need it.
But you are actually controlling the knee anyway. But just because you're below it. But we were always like, be above the knee line. Anyway, going back to what I was saying. So I think inside guards, if you understand inside guards, they'll be your best avenue to use to get to the legs. Basic, like I'm talking basic. Obviously, we've got the K guards and all that stuff now, which is more, we were on about that the other day with the inside and the outside guards. But yeah, if I was teaching basic, I'd always say, look, inside guard, and you want to control. You want to get them down first. If they're standing, you want to get them down to a hip. And then you need to latch on hard because, defense, there's not many defensive principles, I don't think, same with the attacking ones. But yeah, knee line. Knee line is so important, in my opinion, whether you're attacking the ankle or the knee. Go on.
I think one of the core, ideas you have to have in your head when you actually come to playing leg locks is a leg lock. What's the difference between a leg lock and a leg position? And these are kind of used interchangeably. And this is kind of maybe the important part is when someone talks about basic leg lock principles. I think the first part you actually need to then get into your head and separate is the difference between an ankle lock, a heel hook, a knee bar, whatever, and a control position.
Yeah.
Because the ankle lock, the knee bar, the heel hook are all submissions. But there has to be something before that. There has to be a control position.
Control,
just like when you're going for like a any other submission, any other joint submission, you go for an arm bar, a regular arm bar, the spider web precedes it. Like you have, wrap around the arm, you're sitting on the shoulders, etc. The submissions, the final part at the end where you've had the arm outstretched and then you destroy it. Yeah. There's that whole other part first of that minor control position. Same with the Kimura, you get the double wrist grip, as in the wrestling terminology there. And then eventually you control their body enough that you can then ratchet the arm around to the scratch in the back of the head.
Yeah.
I think it's the exact same with the leg locks, is that it's trying to differentiate in your head of like, okay, what are your finishers, but also what are the positions first, like understanding of how to create a pinch above the knee or south the knee for certain finishes as well. But it all circles back around to, I think before you can get into the breaking mechanics is
defense.
Being able to, pardon?
Defense.
Is how do you actually find a leg position? Like, as much, this is actually a really good one. I actually did a class with it was at one of the Globetrotter camps. It was Jeff, I think it was on about how he had us do had us all in the bottom of, all in side control, in the bottom of side control. He said, right, escape. And like he timed us like in 30 seconds, everyone was out of side control. He said, right, okay, escape mount. And like 30 seconds, 1 minute later, everyone was out the bottom of mount. And then he said, right. And he put us in 4-1-1 saddle, whatever, and put us in the cruceta leg knot or whatever it is, where you have, the close side leg, like you're going to heel hook, and then you take the far side leg and you wrap it around. He said, right, go. So everyone escaped that. And no one did. He said, this is the most effective pin control in all of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
It's not that it's a bit harder because your legs, are wrapped up and you've been Lieutenant Dan and had your legs taken away from you. But no one knows that, no one's drilled out this position enough. And it was that kind of separation there of like, right, this is a position. This is a pin. It's not a traditional looking pin because I'm not on top of you pinning you down, but I still have your legs and you can't get away from me.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're trying to look at this from a basic leg lock principles, if you're in a traditional gym or anything like that, is try and separate those ideas in your head first of like, because that's normally how leg locks are looked at, like the boogeyman of, oh, don't do leg locks. But you can do a leg pin. Take out the breaking mechanic at the end. Just understand how to like actually just hold, like pin someone with their legs. Like, how do you get an ashi enough wrap around their leg so they can't go anywhere? So they end up, and that's again when I went to the Danaher seminar. The first part was how do you create such a tight pinch on their leg that the other person can literally drag you around the room and you won't let go of them.
Yeah.
Way before we actually did any breaking mechanics. So as a basic leg lock principle, yeah, okay, there's the joint breaking principle of going above and below the joint you want to destroy. Like if you want to do an arm bar, control the shoulder and the wrist. If you want to do a Kimura, control the other shoulder and the elbow. If you want to do a knee bar, control the hip and the ankle. But before you get to any of those things and, you know, the basic breaking mechanics of anything, look at leg pins, look at the inside outside, and then creating pinches on the leg that just hold them in place. I think as soon as you can get that in drill on that, I think then you can maybe start looking at breaking mechanics. But I think anything before that is kind of pointless, because then it's just like jumping for arm bars, but before you actually understand how to actually hold on to a spider web, you're just going to fall off.
Agreed.
I think that can then circles around to, you know, I can see why in my notes I actually wrote these kind of two things quite close together. This idea of online instructionals and instructionals in general is never look at it as setup, finish, because then you miss those important parts. Like you'll see the setup for like a leg lock in an instructional, and you see like, you know, the unbalancing. You'll see the grabbing of the leg and the break. You think, oh, that's a leg lock. It's not. There was like 3 separate things there. There was the initial setup, but then there's a leg pin, and that leg pin's massive. That leg pin's important. And then once you've got full control of the leg, then you can maybe go for the finish. But that's a whole different subject entirely. Leg pins, but it's not sexy. Jiu-Jitsu is not sexy anyway. I mean, if anyone can see the cameras right now, like Jiu-Jitsu ain't a sexy sport. We do not fall into that category. But yeah, people want to see the smashing of the limbs at the end. They don't care, like, and that's kind of like where, especially leg locks, because it's such a taboo thing to watch, especially for normal jiu-jitsu people. It's like, oh, you guys are mean. You're doing horrible things to each other's legs. It's a pin here, a whole different like pinning system south of the body.
Yes.
And then occasionally we break shit.
But yeah, as a core principle, what I would also say is leg the positions, but don't rely just on leg locks. Fit in how to get up, fit in how to sweep using, you know, the leg controls, because we both know how many times we use the actual controls, but we won't get the finish, so we use them to sweep and get up on top.
Yeah, I think that's kind of circle back around to what we just said about it being a positional thing, as in it's a pin.
Yeah.
And like any other pin, like side control to mount or something like that, you should be able to transition between pins. And just because now you're south of the hips doesn't mean you can't do a leg pin.
Yeah.
And then move north.
That's exactly a major detail. Like there's a lot of people who don't play that or do that. And I'm like, you know, it's not taught all the time, is it? That basic principle that just because you're going for the legs doesn't mean you can't just abandon and you're on top now.
Actually, it was that seminar of Danaher, Tonin, and Ryan over at Braulio's 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was. It was after Polaris. Was gold, just because they kind of spoke about a lot of these kind of principles. Is that, you know, how we talked about this idea of jab cross, like, you know, go for a sweep to go for a leg lock or submission, or go for a pass to go for a submission. At the same time, go north to go south.
Yeah.
Like, you know, go for an arm lock to go for a leg lock, or go for a leg lock to go for an arm lock. And when you can start to see those jab crosses,
yes,
that's madly effective.
That's a mad fight.
Time that I've scarily caught pre, and it's very few and far between, because that guy is a machine to try and roll with, as we both know. Because I actually went for a Kimura on him, picked him up in north-south, went for a Kimura, and as he was defending the Kimura, I threaded my leg through for a inside heel hook.
Oh, was it heel hook?
Yeah, man, heel hook.
I remember one time when you got the armbar on him. Was it?
Yeah, I might have got.
Sorry.
I think he armbarred me.
Yeah, but didn't you get a choke on him once or something, or knock across his jaw when I was sitting there once?
No, I got a choke under his neck once. I think as he was trying to bend his back, and like I controlled him a little bit too much for him to escape. I think I was pinning his other shoulder.
Oh, I haven't seen this heel hook one.
Oh no, the heel hook one was like, I went for a Kimura. I'm talking. I think the important thing about whenever you talk about roles is trying to take out the I beat this guy kind of part behind it.
It's a role, man.
Just look at it from the technical standpoint of like how something worked, the conceptual part. So it wasn't Preet. It was some random guy.
Yeah.
The only way I could beat this individual was by jab crossing it, by making me go high. So then he wouldn't go low. So I went for a Kimura, and as the Kimura was happening, I threaded through and went for the heel hook. I've done that a few times now, where I've gone for like spiderweb armbar, arm bars, and had my legs in the spiderweb, and I've threaded my leg through to, or made it look like I had a weak spiderweb, so they'd take my leg in between their legs to like destroy the position, and I'd swing around completely and go for a heel hook on that leg. And so, like this idea of you have to go for one or the other. It's once you have a leg lock, you have to go for a finish on the leg lock because it's a leg lock. No, it's a leg pin. And as any other pin, there are transitions. You can transition from having like an Ashi to side control.
Yeah.
And in theory, an Ashi is just a fallen over single leg X. And like any other single leg X, why can't you use it as a pass?
Yeah.
Or a sweep and go for a side control of it. So anyone in the traditional kind of gyms where leg locks aren't really taught, change your mindset on what a leg lock actually is. The leg lock is usually the part you're thinking of is the break at the end, the ankle lock, the heel hook, the knee bar. There's a whole system of leg pins beforehand, and those leg pins can be used as transitions into other things, into obviously take reaping into consideration if you're IBJJF. I can't remember the last time we thought about that, dude. But yeah, separate those ideas out of your head. Like go low. Like if you're having an issue like holding side control, learn how to get a good leg weave going. If you lose your side control, if they shrimp in, like go for like a crossbody kind of 70-30 whatever leg pin hold, like almost like you're doing like a it's really hard to like show stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, especially leg locks, because there's like your foot will go from one side to the other and it's a different position completely.
I need to have some sort of like I actually do have like a notebook filled of ideas of what we're going to record when we go back in the gym, and every time we talk, every time we go on the damn Discord channel, I'm not saying I don't like the Discord channel, it's
brilliant. It's brilliant.
Actually, it's actually going to feed into what I talked about with Preet tomorrow, of how regards to this whole group thinking way of growing the jiu-jitsu, as in we've had to think so much more about, because we've actually been asked all these questions. I imagine what he's going through right now, defensive BJJ. He's just getting questions thrown at him all the time. We're just like when people talk like saying I want Preet for dinner. You got Preet at home. Like we're the Preet at home. We're the cheap version. Like so people can.
Oh well.
Yeah, like we want Preet. You got Preet at home, and then they open up as us two. Like our Discord channel is just a really cheap version of defensive BJJ.
Well, we should have said Preet is one of the best online instructors, or else he's going to have us both.
Yeah, okay, he is. I don't watch his stuff because I got it firsthand and had got my soul thoroughly destroyed by him.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to talk about that story tomorrow anyway, about how he broke my heart.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll say it now, is what he did to me, and this is kind of like what made me curious about this whole system. Naqi said this story 1,000 times. Curious about this whole system in the first place is that I met him at the 2017 Globetrotter camp in Copenhagen, and I was a purple belt, and he pinned me to the ground flat just by touching my elbows. He didn't have any pressure on me from side control. He was just like literally on his knees and just like cupped both my elbows and I was stuck to the floor. And every time I moved, he would submit me. And that made me curious, like, how is this man doing this? I thought I had, I was competing at black belt already in some like nogi competitions in the area. And all of a sudden I'm getting bullied by an Estonian guy. It wasn't until like maybe a year later he was actually talking about this very idea, and he said, "Oh, it's my favorite thing to do to purple belts because they think they're getting somewhere. And they do this to them; it completely breaks their egos and their minds." I'm like, and he's like, "I find it so funny to watch." I was like, "Pre, you did it to me, you asshole." He was like, "Oh yeah." It's like, for God's sake.
I think he showed it at the seminar, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And I was like sitting there, like, "Yeah, you did this to me. Like, I was the purple belt you enjoyed watching suffer." Thanks, Dad. I'll make sure I incorporate this in tomorrow. But yeah, I think this is another one of those you have to see it to believe it kind of videos we need to do in the gym of you can transition between a leg pin and an upper body pin.
Yep.
I hope to whoever is a traditional jiu-jitsu player and they hear this, take that on board. They're not scary. They are positions first and foremost. Do the submissions later. If you have a good positional, now if you can hunt a position really well, it's like, okay, there's no point you learning how to guillotine from mount if you're no good at holding mount. There's no point you learning how to get a DARS from side control if you can't hold side control.
Yeah.
Just like there's no point learning how to do an ankle lock if you can't hold a leg pin. Like, do that part first. That's enough. And then down the line, when it's frozen over and everyone's doing leg locks in every jiu-jitsu gym, then maybe you'll have a head start. As I probably hopefully mentioned, I can't remember. So it feels so long ago since we started this podcast. This will be a weekly thing with myself and Naqi. There will be other guests on other podcasts, which I'll be doing. These are currently on Spotify and Amazon.
Are we on Spotify?
Apple, Google. Yeah, man, we're on Spotify.
Oh shit! Send me the thingy link. I want to see it. Dude,
if you just type Villaincast into Spotify, we pop up.
Nice.
I know, man. I was working on it. Yeah, so we're currently on Spotify. We're currently on Amazon. We will be on hopefully Google Podcasts and Apple, and so everyone listen to this. Yeah, there will be more podcasts with guests. We've got Preet coming up. We've got Josh McKinney, Johnny Buck. But also this weekly podcast with Naqi. If you've got any questions you'd like to ask me, Naqi, there are also going to be multiple videos throughout the week of me talking about stuff until we get back in the gym. And then there'll be plenty of gym-based videos as well, me and Naqi answering stuff. But regardless of all that, these are a lot of fun. We have the Discord channel. It's growing all the time. I'm going to have to start bonsai shaping it into actually something a bit more manageable because it's just sprouting all over the place right now. So many different topics. I mean, I leave it for half a day and I can't remember what the hell's been said. Yeah. It's been so long since that part of the thread was visible. But yes, thank you for tuning in on this episode 3 of Villaincast with myself and Naqi. Yes, join us on the Discord channel and come and chat to us. Thank you, Naqi.
Thank you very much. See you guys soon.
See you soon, dude.
In a bit.